Jared Lorenzen, he's now focusing on a different goal, and that is getting.
He's fixing to tackle a brand new challenge, and that's getting his health back on the right track. See, some of these NFL boys, they were blessed with God-given talent and had the whole world watching them. And Newton lets it fly, caught on the outside by Benjamin, and look at that boy scoot. But tell you what, not every one of them could keep the weight off their frames. We're talking weighing in at a heavy 375 pounds. He was out there on the field looking bigger than a prize steer at the county fair. From Carlos Williams, a running back fast as a scalded dog till the pounds slowed him down, to Nate Newton, that legendary lineman who swole up to over 400 pounds after ruling the trenches. These are the fellas who let themselves go and had to pay a mighty steep price for it. Jared Lorenzen. Now, Jared wasn't just your run-of-the-mill quarterback. Folks called him the Hefty Lefty. He was a legend over at Kentucky, chucking that pigskin for over 10,000 yards and 78 touchdowns back in his college days. At 285 pounds, he was already the biggest hoss to ever play quarterback in the history of the league. But there wasn't no denying the boy had skills. The New York Giants picked him up in 2004 after the draft passed him by. He backed up Eli Manning and even got himself a shiny Super Bowl ring. When he was riding high, he had the fame, the respect, and the kind of life most folks only dream about. But troubles off the field and that weighing scale started sneaking up on him like a thief in the night. Even though he showed some real sparks of brilliance, he didn't see the field too much in the big leagues. He only played a handful of times, mostly famous for a quarterback sneak that shook the ground and stepping in when Manning got banged up. But here's the thing, his size, which folks used to get a kick out of, started holding him back. Coaches were fretting about his fitness, and every pound over 285 felt like a boulder in the road. Come 2008, the Giants had to cut him loose. He had a cup of coffee with the Colts. Then he was out of the league for good. Jared kept chasing the dream in those indoor leagues, doing a bit of everything, coaching, managing, and playing. Turned into a bit of a local legend, he did. Videos went all around the internet showing him dancing round defenders, even with a body that was fighting gravity every step. But even then, his health was starting to go south. After breaking his leg and messing up his ankle, that was all she wrote for his playing days. Once he hung up the cleats, the weight just kept piling on. By 2017, bless his heart, he was busting the scales at over 500 pounds. That same year, he started up the Jared Lorenzen Project, documenting his fight to get his life back. With dieting, yoga, and medicine, he managed to drop over 100 pounds, but it was a long, hard road to hoe. Folks online were cheering him on, inspired by his grit, but years of wear and tear had already done their damage. Sadly, Jared passed away on July 3rd, 2019, at just 38 years old. An infection took him, made worse by heart and kidney trouble, and that lifelong battle with obesity. Moving on down the line, we got another player who lost his shot at glory because his physique went downhill. JaMarcus Russell. When JaMarcus came into the league, expectations were higher than a Georgia pine. First pick in the 2007 draft, out of LSU. Boy was big, strong, and had an arm like a cannon, looked like the next big superstar. Down in the Bayou, he was the man, won the Manning Award and led them Tigers to a big win in the Sugar Bowl. Standing 6'6" with a rocket for an arm, looked like nothing could stop him. But the NFL? It ain't got much mercy for folks who ain't ready. His time with the Oakland Raiders was shorter than a rodeo ride and messy as a mud pit. He held out for money and missed the start, and when he finally got on the grass, his play was all over the map. He couldn't stop giving the ball away. Finished that first year throwing more picks than scores, with a rating lower than a snake's belly. 3 seasons went by, and he never did find the work ethic or the discipline you expect from a top dog. But keeping his weight down and his wind up turned into a mountain he just couldn't climb. Come 2010, folks said he was ballooning up like a tick on a hound dog every year, tipping the scales past 300 pounds until he could barely scoot around or throw a decent ball. Coach Tom Cable finally buried him deep on the bench, and by May of 2010, the Raiders told him to hit the trail. His big league dreams were dead and buried before the candles were blown out on his 25th birthday cake. He went from being a strapping young gunslinger down at LSU to a liability in the pros quicker than ice melts on a porch in August. Trouble came knocking off the field too, with a 2010 arrest for possession of codeine and some messy legal business about missing money back at his high school. By the time he decided to saddle up for a comeback in 2013, He had to tear his body down and build it back up from the studs. Starting out heavy at 315 pounds, he sweated off better than 50 pounds, getting down to a lean 281 with just 15% body fat. Those trainers said he was looking borderline skinny, moving like a wildcat compared to the lumbering giant he'd been in years past. But despite looking fit as a fiddle, the NFL bosses just stood there shaking their heads. Nobody wanted to take a gamble on him, and Russell never did take another snap under the Sunday lights. These days, he's teaching the young bucks how to play and trying to better himself, but that shadow of what could have been follows him like a stray dog. Now, pull up a chair for the tale of Kelvin Benjamin, a fella whose love for the dinner table and bad luck with injuries cost him his golden ticket. When Kelvin first stepped onto the scene, he had a mix of size and speed that was rare as a hen's tooth. Standing 6'5" and weighing 240 out of Florida State, he could jump so high he'd get a nosebleed, reminding folks of giants like Plaxico Burress and Calvin Johnson. After a college season where he racked up over 1,011 yards and 15 scores, he threw his hat in the ring for the 2014 draft, and the Panthers snatched him up at pick 28. That boy came out the gate swinging like a saloon door in a hurricane. He hauled in 73 catches for 1,008 yards and 9 touchdowns, bullying defenders in the red zone like a big brother in a backyard scuffle. With arms long enough to box with God, he was a nightmare to cover and quickly became the biggest bully on the block. But pretty soon, his waistline started expanding faster than a rumor in a small town. He always did battle the bulge, and by the 2015 offseason, word got out. He waddled into camp at 280 pounds, roughly 35 pounds heavier than he ought to be. The whole world lit up with gossip quicker than a brush fire. Pictures of him looking thicker than a bowl of oatmeal went everywhere, with folks cracking jokes that he was just one Popeye's biscuit away from playing on the offensive line. Coach Ron Rivera reckoned Benjamin was carrying too much timber, saying all that extra weight was making his hamstrings pop like cheap rubber bands. Then the injuries started piling up like dirty laundry. He blew out his knee in 2015, and even when he limped back in 2016, he was moving slower than molasses in January. He managed 941 yards and 7 scores that year, but he was as inconsistent as Texas weather and clearly out of shape. Halfway through 2017, the Panthers shipped him off to the Buffalo Bills, where he just couldn't stay on the field or make a play to save his life. He finished that year with 692 yards, and the next season, they cut him loose after he scraped together just 354 yards and 1 lonely touchdown. Word was, his heart wasn't in it, and his gut was getting bigger, sealing his fate. Even a cup of coffee with the Kansas City Chiefs in 2018 couldn't save his bacon. He caught 2 measly passes in 3 games and sat on the couch during the playoffs. One last try with the Giants in 2021 fizzled out before training camp even started, and that was all she wrote for his NFL days. Now hold your horses, because we gotta talk about Albert Haynesworth, a man whose career went south faster than a duck in winter due to his health. Albert busted into the league looking like the meanest, toughest defensive tackle anyone had seen in a coon's age. He was a mountain of a man at 6'6" and 317 pounds, straight out of the University of Tennessee. The Tennessee Titans spent a first-round pick on him back in 2002, expecting big things. Scouts were drooling over his size and strength, saying he moved like a man half his weight. He ran the 40-yard dash in 4.8 to 2 seconds and could jump 39 inches straight up. That ain't normal for a big fella. And the man could broad jump over 9 feet. Lord have mercy. He didn't waste no time becoming the top dog in the trenches, snagging 2 Pro Bowl nods and All-Pro honors between 2007 and 2008. He was tossing offensive linemen around like ragdolls, keeping quarterbacks awake at night. After 2008, he was the belle of the ball in free agency, with every team wanting a piece of him. The Washington Redskins backed up the Brinks truck, giving him a 7-year deal worth $100 million, enough money to burn a wet mule. Folks expected miracles, but his time in the Capitol turned sour quicker than milk on a radiator. Haynesworth didn't have the stomach for the grind, dodging mandatory camps like he was skipping Sunday school and turning his nose up at the sweat equity a star player ought to be paying. They had to drag him through a conditioning test before he could even step on the grass, and he only managed to survive 5 out of 13 practices during a 3-week stretch of camp. Between a body that wouldn't cooperate and a motor that wouldn't run, he barely scraped together 20 games in 2 seasons, making that contract look like the biggest highway robbery in NFL history. wasn't just laziness, though his body was breaking down faster than a cheap pickup truck on a dirt road. While he was playing, he got hit with rhabdomyolysis, a nasty business where your muscles basically melt from working too hard without enough water in the tank. Those spells knocked the wind out of his sails, keeping him from training right and leaving his performance more inconsistent than Texas weather. Once he hung up the cleats, things went from bad to worse in a hurry. By 2019, his kidneys had completely shut down, a failure he reckons came from popping painkillers like Toradol like they were candy during his glory days. The good Lord smiled on him in 2021 when he got a kidney transplant that saved his life. But it wasn't just his gut giving him grief. Back in 2014, brain aneurysms nearly put him 6 feet under and left his memory foggy. Docs told him flat out not to lift anything heavier than 25 pounds over his head, stripping away the brute strength that used to be his calling card. Now, shift your gaze to another fella whose waistline eventually became the punchline of every joke in town. We're talking about Eddie Lacy. When Eddie first hit the league, he was a runaway freight train that nobody wanted to stand in front of. The Packers snatched him up in the second round of the 2013 draft, fresh out of Alabama with 3 championship rings and a build made for bruising. Weighing in at 231 pounds, he was light on his feet but hit with the force of a sledgehammer. That rookie year proved all the chatter was true. He tore up the turf for 1,278 yards and 11 scores, snagged another 257 through the air, and walked away with Rookie of the Year honors and a Pro Bowl nod. He was the first Packer to bring home that rookie hardware since 1971, setting records and looking like the future king of the backfield. For the next couple of seasons, he kept that momentum rolling, capping off 2014 with over 1,000 yards rushing and finding pay dirt 9 times. But then the wheels started to wobble. Injuries in 2015, a bum ankle early on and a groin pull in November slowed him down, and missing curfew didn't do him any favors with the boss man either. His numbers took a nosedive to 758 yards and a measly 3 touchdowns, a far cry from the terror he used to be. As his game slipped, his gut started to grow. That rock-solid 231-pound frame blew up like a balloon, hitting 267 pounds by 2017. You could see it plain as day. He lost his giddy-up, couldn't turn the corner, and the fans started howling with laughter. Folks flooded the internet with memes about his love for Chinese takeout, mocking his size without a shred of mercy. Eddie admitted the teasing cut deep, but he swore he was gonna sweat it off and get right. When he signed with the Seattle Seahawks, they put a bounty on his belly, $55,000, just to hit 250 pounds, showing how desperate things had gotten. He tried everything from P90X to yoga, sweating buckets with trainers, but he could never quite get back to that fighting shape he had as a rookie. Between the nagging injuries, the weight yo-yo, and the world watching his waistline, his time in the league fizzled out. Now, let's look at a big hoss who eventually tipped the scales at 400 pounds, Shaun Rogers. Shaun came into the league like a bear waking up from hibernation, hungry and mean. A homegrown Texas boy from LaPorte, he was a two-way terror in high school and even ran the ball near the goal line, scaring the daylights out of defenders. The boys in the locker room called him Chunks because he took up more space than a parked Cadillac. At the University of Texas, he teamed up with Casey Hampton to form a brick wall, racking up nearly 200 tackles and getting the nod for all Big 12 honors in 2000. The Detroit Lions saw that Texas-sized talent and grabbed him 61st overall in the 2001 draft. Didn't take long for him to become the sheriff of the defensive line up in Detroit. His first year, he posted 90 tackles and swatted down 4 passes like he was playing volleyball. By 2004, he was a Pro Bowler, a rare breed of giant who could move mountains and chase down quarterbacks. But hauling all that weight around, combined with living the high life, started to wear his body down to the nub. The older he got, the harder it was to keep the pounds off. Standing 6'4", folks say he swelled up to near 400 pounds, way bigger than any man ought to be on a football field. Even when he tried his luck with the Giants later on, he showed up to camp north of 350 pounds, looking like he was fixin' to pass out before the whistle blew. Old teammates said his weight went up and down like a pump jack, and Shaun himself admitted keeping that size in check was a battle he just couldn't win. Way back in 2019, Rogers decided it was high time to grab the bull by the horns regarding his health. The man went under the knife for gastric sleeve surgery, a serious procedure that shrank his stomach down to the size of a walnut. That surgery forced him to ease up on the vittles, drop a mountain of weight, and fix up that sugar trouble he'd picked up during his playing days. Word around the campfire is he shed upwards of 250 pounds, going from a massive, rusty old tractor of a tackle to looking as lean as a fence post. Now, pull up a chair for this next tale about Carlos Williams, an NFL fella who packed on the pounds and pointed the finger right at his bride-to-be. Carlos Williams strutted into the league, shining brighter than a diamond in a goat's ear. He was a 5-star recruit coming out of Ridge Community High School down in Davenport, Florida. The boy was an ace in football, track, and hoops, clocking a 10.5-second time in the 100-meter dash as a senior at Florida State. Williams started out playing safety, but they swapped him to running back quicker than a hiccup, and he showed off some serious giddy-up. In 2013, his very first run as a back went 65 yards to the house, a sign of the thunder he was fixin' to bring. By 2014, he'd racked up 689 yards and 11 scores, proving he was a tough nut to crack down near the goal line. The Buffalo Bills scooped him up in the 5th round, pick 105 overall in 2015, and he hit the ground running like a scalded dog. His first time touching the rock in the big leagues resulted in a 26-yard touchdown run. Then in Week 3, he tore up the Miami Dolphins for 110 yards and a pair of scores. Williams didn't waste no time tying an NFL record, scoring in 6 straight games right out of the gate, matching Robert Edwards. Standing 6'1" and weighing roughly 230 pounds, he was a locomotive coming out of the backfield with size and speed to boot. But sad to say, the wheels started falling off the wagon in 2016 on account of his waistline. Come June, he rolled into Buffalo's mandatory camp, looking thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, reportedly ballooning up to 261 pounds. The man had the gall to blame his weight gain on his fiance's pregnancy cravings, joking he was chowing down every time she did. The Bills weren't amused and stuck him on solo drills, with Coach Rex Ryan saying plainly he wasn't anywhere near ready to play ball. To his credit, Williams tried to right the ship, cutting out the red meat, eating like a bird, and dodging those late-night snacks. He got with the team's strength coaches, sweating buckets to get his wind back. But even with all that huffing and puffing, Williams' career was sinking fast. Buffalo cut him loose in August of 2016, and he found himself in hot water with suspensions for running afoul of the league's substance policies. Next on the docket is a fella who got dangerously big, the one and only Nate Newton. Nate Newton stepped onto the professional field looking like a force of nature in the trenches. After playing his heart out at Florida A&M and earning all-conference honors, he went undrafted in 1983 but eventually signed with the Redskins. A bad car wreck and getting cut by Washington delayed his start, but he found his footing down in the USFL with the Tampa Bay Bandits. He played offensive tackle for Steve Spurrier in 1984 and 1985. Standing 6'2" and wider than a barn door, folks started calling him the Kitchen. When he hitched his wagon to the Dallas Cowboys in 1986, Newton became the bedrock of that offensive line. He made 6 trips to the Pro Bowl between 1992 and 98 and was absolutely vital to bringing home 3 Super Bowl trophies in the 90s. But despite being a king on the grass, the scale was always his toughest opponent. At his peak, he played around 325 pounds. But once he hung up the cleats, he blew up to over 400 pounds, medically classified as super obese. By 2010, Nate was staring down the barrel of diabetes, high blood pressure, and sleep apnea. Walking was a chore, and he was terrified he'd be pushing up daisies before his youngest boy graduated. Determined to stick around, Newton went in for vertical gastrectomy in April 2010, chopping out about 75% of his stomach. Between that surgery, a high-protein diet, and working out 5 hours a day, he melted off over 175 pounds, getting down to 220. That was the lightest he'd been since he was a pup in high school. Newton said it saved his life, letting him move freely and feel a spark he hadn't felt in donkey's years. On the flip side, we got LenDale White, whose body quit on him due to the bottle and some other nonsense off the field. LenDale White came into the league with a reputation for running over folks like a semi-truck. Born in Denver, he was the big cheese in Colorado high school ball, rushing for over 7,804 yards and stacking up awards. At USC, he was the thunder to Reggie Bush's lightning, using his brute strength to lead the Trojans in rushing his first 2 seasons. White wrapped up his college days with 3,159 yards and 52 touchdowns, putting on a show in the Orange Bowl and the Rose Bowl. Even with all the yards he piled up, folks were nervous about drafting White because they reckoned he didn't have the wind to last. Down at the combine, scouts took one look at his shirtless gut and shook their heads, branding him with names like Big Fat LenDale and Len Whale. He played hooky on most of the workouts, only managed to push up that bench press bar 15 times, and showed up to the big leagues looking softer than a fresh biscuit. The Tennessee Titans decided to roll the dice on him with the 45th pick back in 2006. White's first year in the pros was quieter than a church mouse. He barely scraped together 244 yards on 61 tries and didn't find the end zone a single time. Come 2007, he was splitting time at first, but once they let him loose, he ran like a scalded dog for over 1,000 yards and 7 scores. In 2008, sharing the load with Chris Johnson, White found pay dirt 15 times and busted an 80-yard run, led in the conference in scoring even though he was starting to wear down. That's when his belly started swelling up noticeable like. Word around the campfire was he ballooned up to 265 pounds while he was playing for the Titans. Carrying that much timber slowed him down and got tongues wagging. Coaches and teammates saw he was dragging his wagon, and his fitness became the main topic of conversation. By 2009, starring down a contract year and wanting to keep his job, he got a fire lit under him. White managed to shed over 30 pounds, slimming down to 229. He swore he dropped the weight by putting down the bottle and sticking to a training routine tighter than a new pair of boots. Everyone from the locker room to the big boss saw the change, saying he looked quicker and meaner on his feet. But even with the new look, his luck in the league started heading south. They traded him to Seattle in 2010, but he flunked a drug test and got sent packing before the season even kicked off. He tried to catch on with Denver, but popped his Achilles in the preseason, ending his year and pretty much closing the book on his career by 2011. Now, moving right along, we got another feller whose appetite cost him on the gridiron. We're talking about Desmond Watson. You could tell Desmond Watson was going to be a big ol' hoss from the day he was born. Born down in Plant City, Florida, he started out the runt of the litter, but sprouted up into a giant quicker than corn in July. By the time he was in Pee Wee ball, he was already tossing kids around like rag dolls. And when he was a junior at Armwood High, he was standing 6'6" and tipping the scales at 375 pounds. Watson was a terror on that field, racking up 65 tackles and 10 sacks to help his team march to the state playoffs. By his senior year, he had nearly 160 tackles and 24 sacks, with big schools like Alabama and Michigan knocking down his door. He decided to sign with the Florida Gators, hoping to turn that massive size into a gold mine. But down in the swamp, Watson just kept on getting bigger. He showed up freshman year weighing 400 pounds, playing a little bit in 13 games but only grabbing 7 tackles. Over the next 3 seasons, he blew up like a balloon, climbing all the way to 464 pounds. He got the starting nod as a sophomore, tallying 25 stops, but he never could quite move the way he needed to. When he was done with college, he'd played in every game, but only had 63 tackles and 1.5 sacks to show for it. Folks on the internet loved gawking at his size, but it was clear as day that his conditioning was holding him back. In 2025, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers gave him a shot. They had to sideline him right away on the injury list because he was just too heavy to play. He managed to drop about 25 pounds, working day and night with the food experts and trainers. Watson said it was a hard row to hoe, doing his own workouts on the side while watching the team practice. By September, he earned a spot on the practice squad, helping out where he could while trying to get his wind back. Veterans like Vita Vea took him under their wing, teaching him what it means to be a pro. He ain't made the active roster just yet, but he's trimmed down to 449 pounds and is working his tail off to get better. Y'all let us know what you reckon in the comments section below. And before you skedaddle, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to NFL Facts so you don't miss the next yarn we spin.